All right, let's dive in. Today we're going deep, really deep into a network that's got it all. Spirituality, controversy, and some seriously wild connections.
Buckle up.
It all centers around a guy named Balakhilya Das,
Mm.
also known as Johnny Baldwin Midget. You want to understand his place in this whole thing, right?
Yeah, and it's a big thing.
So we're talking about his involvement with Chris Butler's Science of Identity Foundation,
Okay.
SIF,
Right.
and all those offshoots like, what is it, Mr. Jaitani,
Uh-huh.
Mantra.pl, and then there's QNet, and even folks like Tulsi Gabbard. What a mix.
It's a lot to unpack for sure. We're talking beliefs, money, even politics.
Seriously, so we've been digging through forum posts, leaked letters, articles, the whole works.
Trying to get the full picture.
Exactly. And one thing that jumps out is Balakhilya Das. He's all over the place online, especially on Mantra.pl. So what's his deal in this network? What's he doing there?
Well, some people even call him an overseer or a deputy guru in Butler's circle.
Whoa, okay, Deputy Guru.
To get that, though, we got to understand SUF itself. It's not just your average spiritual group. There's a whole structure, a hierarchy of who's who is what they're supposed to do.
So if Balakhilya Das is this overseer guy, how much sway does he actually have over SUF members?
Oh, it could be significant. I mean, he's not just some random dude. If he's in that position, he's interpreting, enforcing Butler's teachings.
Wow, so that brings up the whole dynamic between him, Butler, and all the followers.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of relationship are we even talking about here? How much freedom do people have in this system?
Those are the big questions.
Big time. And then you've got these offshoots, Misha Taitani and Mantra.pl. How do those fit into the puzzle?
Well, they seem to be extensions of the core SIF philosophy, but with their own focus. Like Misha Zaitani seems to be more about spreading those teachings in Poland.
Makes sense.
And Mantra.pl is kind of like their online hub for devotees.
Like a network inside a network.
Exactly. Each piece adds to Butler's reach, amplifies the whole thing.
Like ripples spreading out from the center.
Yeah.
And to add another layer, we've got QNet. That's the multi-level marketing company, right? The one that's been in hot water.
That's the one.
So what ties Balakhilya Das to QNet?
All right, this is where it gets even more interesting. There's this guy, Joseph Bismarck, also known as Japa Das. He's big in QNet and a follower of Butler.
Wait, so a QNet leader is deep in SIF?
Seems that way. And QNet, well, they've been accused of being a straight-up pyramid scheme. So that raises all sorts of ethical, financial red flags.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that he's linked to SIF, it suggests there might be some overlap, especially when it comes to their money stuff.
That's a huge connection. Is there anything that shows how QNet's business model, the way they do things, could be mixed up with SIF's structure?
Well, it's still coming out, but former members have said they were pressured to donate money to SIF. Like, a lot of money, sometimes more than they could afford.
Oh.
And they also talked about being exploited, working tons of hours for little to no pay. It makes you wonder if QNet's tactics, their whole money-making scheme, might be bleeding into how SEF operates internally.
That's a scary thought. So potentially, these two organizations are financially entangled, and that just throws a whole new wrench into things. But before we get too deep into that, let's talk about Tulsi Gabbard. Her name keeps popping up connected to both SIF and Balakhilya Das. Where does she fit in?
Tulsi Gabbard, she was raised in SEF. Her family's deeply connected. Her father was involved, even started a school that some say was influenced by SIF teachings.
Wow, okay. And she's been pretty vocal about defending Butler, even with all these accusations flying around. It's pretty surprising, considering how serious some of them are. What could be motivating her to stick up for him so strongly? Just loyalty? Or is there something more going on?
It's a question that needs some serious digging. I mean, her ongoing support for Butler has definitely fueled speculation about her current relationship with SIF. Is she still active? And how much has her upbringing in SIF influenced her political views?
So her connection to SIF is just another piece of this already crazy puzzle. We're seeing potential links between spirituality, finances, maybe even politics. This web is seriously tangled, and we've only just started to untangle it.
Oh yeah, we're just getting started.
Let's take a look at the people at the heart of it, the followers of Chris Butler. How do they see Butler and Balakhilya Das? What are their experiences like within this whole organization?
That's what we need to understand, right? The human side of it all.
Absolutely. Let's go right to the heart of SEF and try to understand what these followers are going through. We'll be back in a bit to explore that part of the story.
All right, so we've laid out the structure, pointed out some concerning connections.
Yeah, some red flags for sure.
But now let's zoom in on the people, the individuals in this network. What draws someone to SUF in the first place?
I mean, from what I've gathered, they present themselves as this path to self-discovery, enlightenment, all that.
Right, right. Would you say that's a fair take on their core teachings?
I think so, yeah.
Mm.
It's all about the self as this pure spirit soul, separate from, the material world.
Uh-huh, like you are not your body, that sort of thing.
Exactly. And they emphasize connecting with that true self through practices like meditation, yoga, chanting.
Pretty standard for a spiritual group, right?
Seems like it. So what makes SIF different from all the other organizations with similar teachings?
Well, here's the thing. They kind of blend Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism with Western philosophy.
Interesting.
Yeah, they frame it as a scientific approach to spirituality.
Scientific spirituality.
Yeah, exactly. A rational, logical path to self-realization. That might appeal to people who are looking for something, more intellectual, evidence-based.
So bridging the gap between faith and reason.
Exactly. But then we have all this evidence of potential manipulation, control within SIF.
Right. It's kind of contradictory.
It is. It's a paradox. They offer these teachings that resonate with people searching for meaning, purpose, but then there's this other side.
The dark side.
Yeah, you could say that. Remember the whole deputy guru thing we talked about? That hierarchy with Butler at the top? Figures like Balakhilya Das potentially acting as go-betweens? It creates this environment where, well, individual critical thinking might not be encouraged.
So the very structure that's supposed to guide and support could actually become a way to control people.
You got it. And that's when things get dangerous. When unquestioning obedience to the guru becomes the norm.
Because then there's no room for questions, for doubt.
Exactly. If devotees aren't allowed to critically evaluate the teachings or challenge authority, well, that's when manipulation, even abuse, can flourish.
And we've heard from those former members, the ones who say they felt trapped, afraid to speak up, to get help.
Right, right.
It seems like such a struggle, this tension between genuine spiritual growth and the potential for harm in such a tightly controlled environment.
Absolutely. And this tension, it gets even more intense when you consider the financial allegations surrounding Seth.
You mean the former members who claimed they were pressured into donating money?
Yes, sometimes way more than they could afford.
So it's not just about spiritual control then. There could be a financial motive at play.
It's looking that way. And that's where QNet comes back into the picture, remember?
Oh yeah, Joseph Bismarck, big player in QNet, also a Butler follower.
And QNet's business model, the whole pyramid scheme thing, it hinges on recruitment and the promise of getting rich.
Makes you wonder if those same tactics are being used within SIF, to get money from followers.
It's a valid concern. When you add in the allegations of unpaid labor, the pressure to contribute financially, it starts to paint a pretty disturbing picture.
Yeah, it raises some serious questions about whether the organization is truly looking out for its members or if it's exploiting their faith for profit.
And let's not forget Patrick Bowler, right? Major SIF financier, convicted on drug charges.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And after that happened, Butler apparently demanded even more money from his followers.
Wow, so SIF might be relying on some shady funding sources to stay afloat.
It's possible. But let's go back to the individuals within all of this. You said we need to understand how they see Butler and Balakhilya Das, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are their perspectives?
Yeah, what are they experiencing? I mean, it must be tough to get a clear picture. SIF's so secretive.
Oh, it is. But we do get glimpses from online forums, testimonials, that sort of thing. Many current members, they have deep reverence for Butler, see him as a genuine spiritual guide, someone who's helped them find meaning, purpose.
So a lot of genuine devotion, gratitude toward Butler.
Yeah, and it's important to acknowledge that. These people have found something meaningful in stuff. We can't dismiss that. But, it's just as important to listen to those who have left, especially the ones alleging manipulation, abuse, financial exploitation.
It's like there are two different realities coexisting within SIF.
You could say that. Those inside might experience belonging, spiritual fulfillment, while those who've left, they describe something much darker.
It's hard to reconcile those two sides.
That's the challenge with understanding organizations like SIF, conflicting narratives. And it's our job to consider all of them, especially the ones that are often silenced,
And then you've got Tulsi Gabbard, raised in SIF, publicly defending Butler.
Right. Her story bridges that gap between how SIF works internally and the outside world, politics, all of that.
It makes you think, how much do her beliefs, shaped by SIF, influence her political choices, her relationship with power? It's a crucial piece of this whole puzzle.
It is. We need to dig deeper into that Gabbard connection to really understand the scope of Balakhilya Das's role, the intricacies of this whole network.
Let's take a minute to absorb all this, and then we'll come back to explore that Gabbard connection in more detail. All right, welcome back to our deep dive. Man, this whole network around Balakhilya Das and Chris Butler, it's just getting more and more fascinating. We've gone from alleged cult activity to financial stuff, and now we're even talking about politicians like Tulsi Gabbard.
It's a real rabbit hole.
It is. So let's finally get to that Gabbard connection and see how it all fits in.
Okay, so it's this really interesting part of the story, because it shows how faith, personal experience, and public life, how they all intersect.
Yeah.
So we know Tulsi Gabbard was raised in SIF, and her family, they're deeply rooted in the organization. Her father was involved, even founded a school, and some people say the curriculum was influenced by Butler's teachings.
Right, and she's been open about her Hindu faith, how it shapes her worldview, but then she also publicly defends Chris Butler, even with all these serious allegations against him. It's hard to square those two things.
It's definitely caused a lot of debate.
Yeah, for sure.
Some people think she's just blindly loyal, Maybe she has a blind spot when it comes to SIF, the organization she grew up in. Others say no, she genuinely believes Butler is innocent.
It's got to be tough, being caught between personal loyalty and then having all this information come out that potentially shows wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Do we have any idea how Gabbard herself explains this, her faith and her support for Butler in light of these allegations?
Well, she said publicly that her own experiences with Butler have been positive, so she finds the allegations hard to believe. She also says her faith is personal and shouldn't be mixed up with her politics or what she does.
So trying to keep those two parts of her life separate, but is that even possible? Especially with an organization like SIF, where the lines between spirituality, finances, even politics seem so blurry.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Can you really compartmentalize your beliefs, your experiences, when those beliefs have been shaped by a group that might be controlling its members?
Exactly. And it's possible Gabbard's not even aware of the full extent of the alleged wrongdoing in SIF.
It's definitely possible. We know how tightly they control information.
So maybe she's only seen certain parts of how SIF operates, or maybe she chooses not to believe the things that don't fit with her experiences.
Right, so she's either genuinely unaware, or she's consciously choosing to prioritize her faith and personal experiences over this evidence that contradicts her worldview.
Either way, it's a fascinating dilemma, both psychologically and ethically.
It is. It makes you think about the nature of belief, group dynamics, and how hard it is to navigate these conflicting narratives.
And it adds another layer to how we understand Balakhilya Das and his role in this network. It's not just the spiritual lives of SIF members he's touching, it's potentially politics too, even shaping the beliefs of someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who has a national platform.
Exactly. It shows how these seemingly isolated spiritual communities can have these huge ripple effects.
Wow. This deep dive has been quite a journey. We've uncovered some pretty disturbing stuff and really makes you think.
Yeah, we've learned a lot about beliefs, the potential for people to be taken advantage of, and how hard it is to figure out what's true when you're dealing with these carefully crafted stories.
And even though we've learned a lot, it feels like we're just scratching the surface. There are still so many questions.
Oh, yeah. There's always more to uncover. We encourage you, the listener, to keep digging, do your own research on this fascinating topic.
Ask questions, challenge what you think you know, and consider all sides of the story. Critical thinking is so important, especially when it comes to faith and authority.
Couldn't agree more. And remember, even in these seemingly closed-off systems, individual voices can make a difference.
Well said. So, until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.